2 weeks into his presidency, and Donald Trump is hitting his campaign issues one by one. This time it could be a currency war. President Trump on Tuesday accused Japan and China of devaluing their currencies to gain a trade advantage against the U.S.
You look at what China's doing, you look at what Japan has done over the years. They play the money market, they play the devaluation market, and we sit there like a bunch of dummies.
Just added to the list, Germany, by Trump's top trade advisor, Peter Navarro, who told the Financial Times that Germany was using a grossly undervalued euro to exploit the US and its EU partners. German Chancellor Angela Merkel was quick to hit back against that idea.
Germany is a country that has always called for the European Central Bank to pursue an independent policy, just as the Bundesbank did before the euro existed. Because of that, we will not influence the behavior of the ECB. And as a result, I cannot and do not want to change the situation as it is. And apart from that, we try to stand our ground in the global market with globally competitive products in fair competition with everyone else.
Japan also responded to Trump's criticism. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said on Wednesday that the central bank's ultra-loose monetary policy was not aimed at devaluating the yen, but to achieve the country's inflation target. Masatsugu Asakawa, Vice Finance Minister of Japan for International Affairs, said the foreign exchange rates were decided by markets and were not manipulated.
European Union official says Donald Trump is one of three, quote, existential threats to the EU. Senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott explains tonight from London.
Europe is afraid. Less than 2 weeks into the administration of President Donald Trump, and the leader of the European Union is branding longtime close ally, the U.S., a threat.
The change in Washington puts the European Union in a difficult situation, with the new administration seeming to put into question the last 70 years of American foreign policy.
Leaders here point to his encouragement of UK Prime Minister Theresa May about Britain's exit from the EU, as well as criticism by a Trump aide that Germany is undervaluing the euro to exploit the US in trade.
We try to stand our ground in the global market with globally competitive products in fair competition with everybody else.
Add to that Trump's criticism of NATO, his apparent friendliness with Russian President Vladimir Putin, with Russia seen as menacing Ukraine and other Eastern European countries, and the ongoing anger over the executive order on immigration. Europe is still hoping for the best, but fearing the worst.
If this relation blows up, it's going to be extremely painful for everybody, for all sides, so the best is to avoid it.
In fact, though, some politicians here, mostly on the right, have been finding common ground with the president. British member of the European Parliament, Nigel Farage, stood up today and defended Trump amid heckles all around.
Seems to me that actually, with all the anti-Trump rhetoric that is coming from everywhere, actually what we're hearing is the true nature of the European project, which is genuine anti-Americanism.
European leaders are still looking to meet with President Trump, but a White House aide reportedly rebuffed a summit specifically with the European Union. They were said to be told it's not a priority.
The quiet hum of nuclear power is music to the ears of the Russian government. On top of supplying 90% of Hungary's gas, it's now extending this nuclear reactor south of the capital, Budapest. The deal goes against aspirations in the European Union to get away from reliance on Russian energy. But Hungary's Prime Minister speaks in lyrical tones about the shared values of his country and Russia.
Those who do not understand that respect goes before ideology will not be able to open towards the East. We're in a luckier position because we are an Eastern people, infused with Christianity.
Many Hungarians would disagree. Europeans are increasingly nervous at having such a supporter of the Kremlin inside the EU.
The expansion of this place doesn't only entrench Hungary's position as Moscow's best friend inside the European Union, it's seen as part of a bigger strategy by Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban to place his country as the European partner of a new axis, alongside Vladimir Putin and the new president of the United States.
Orbán was the first European leader to phone Donald Trump and congratulate him on winning the presidency. They have much in common. The fences that Hungary put up against Muslim refugees, the so-called defence of Christianity, the mutual dislike of federal Europe, and support for economic nationalism, the rejection of the whole European notion of multilateralism. It's all part of the same piece. With the EU under philosophical attack from Trump and Putin, Orbán's support for them frightens his opponents.
We can already see that they are friends with Putin, and Orbán makes favors to Mr. Putin, and he's looking for the friendship of Mr. Trump as well. This triangle can be very dangerous for the European Union, first economically and also politically.
The hostility is as hard as the ice on the Danube. Orbán suggested recently it was quite wonderful to have Trump and Putin in office at the same time.
The British Parliament has voted in favour of a bill giving the Prime Minister the power to trigger Article 50 and begin the Brexit process. Harry, so in the end, the vote sailed through.
It did indeed. Good evening, Nadira. Well, it was described earlier in the day as a fateful moment in the country's history. And indeed, the government got what it wanted, a whopping majority of, it was 384 supporting this bill, the European Union notification of withdrawal bill. That is now one step closer to becoming law. That law would give the power to the government to invoke Article 50 and officially begin divorce proceedings with the EU. And this was a vote in the Commons tonight. MPs, parliamentarians, of course, before the referendum last summer, most of them supported staying in the EU. So tonight was a vital first test of exactly how they will vote after the referendum. As I say, 498 voted for, but 114 didn't. Many of them are saying that they now find themselves in a crisis of personal conscience, voting also considering what their constituents want and then what the country more broadly wants in terms of the referendum result last summer. So some still trying to block Brexit even at this stage. But tonight was just one of the first hurdles for this bill, and indeed one of the first hurdles for Theresa May to fulfil her promise to invoke Article 50 by the end of next month.
If Britain can do it, why not California? CalExit, a movement for California to secede from the United States, gets the go-ahead to start collecting signatures. On January 26, Secretary of State Alex Padilla gave his approval for a group called Yes California to begin collecting the nearly 600,000 signatures it needs to move forward. If all the signatures are gathered by July 25th, the group will be able to include a proposal on the 2018 ballot to alter parts of California's constitution. If that measure passes, the next step would be a vote in 2019 to decide if California should secede as a, quote, free, sovereign, and independent country. The secession would also need approval of 2/3 of both the House and the Senate in at least 38 U.S. states. The group's co-founder says the chances of California actually seceding are, quote, as likely as Donald Trump becoming president.
UC Berkeley was forced to cancel an event featuring Breitbart news editor Milo Yiannopoulos after violent protests erupted on campus. Demonstrators reportedly threw a series of smoke bombs and flares, causing a fire. Some protesters pulled away metal barricades as police in riot gear guarded the building. Yiannopoulos was scheduled to speak Wednesday night on the last stop of a tour aimed at defying what he calls an epidemic of political correctness on college campuses. He has been a vocal supporter of President Trump. The violence comes after hundreds protested peacefully hours before the event, carrying signs that read, "Hate speech is not free speech."
And Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling for U.S. President Donald Trump's order to temporarily ban nationals from 7 Muslim-majority countries to be removed. Speaking at the UN headquarters in New York on Wednesday local time, Guterres said Trump's executive order was not the best way to protect the US or other countries from possible terrorist infiltration. He emphasized that such measures may spread anxiety and anger that could help terror groups recruit new members. The Vatican has also added its weight to the flurry of international criticism. A senior official expressed concern, calling for openness two other cultures. The Vatican newspaper also wrote that President Trump's recourse to walls and travel bans is counterproductive to America's economic interests.
Over 1,000 police raiding 54 homes, businesses and mosques. A mass operation across central Germany in the early hours of Wednesday morning, culminating in the arrest of a Tunisian man suspected of plotting an attack. The 36-year-old asylum seeker found in Frankfurt now under investigation. He's thought to have recruited and trafficked for Islamic State here since 2015, building up a network of supporters to carry out terrorist attacks in Germany. He's among 15 others also being investigated. German police arrested 3 men in Berlin over suspected links to Islamic State militants, saying they planned to travel to the Middle East for combat training. Attack plans were at an early stage and no concrete target had been chosen, but prosecutors say the operation had smashed an extensive network. The Frankfurt suspect is also wanted in Tunisia, where he's thought to have been involved in the deadly militant assault against the Bardo Museum in Tunis. In Germany, nerves are still on edge after failed asylum seeker Anis Amri killed 12 people by ploughing a truck into a Berlin Christmas market. The worst of a spate of attacks on civilians in the country.
Hundreds of migrants are returning to a French town near a former refugee camp. The camp, known as the Jungle, was on the outskirts of Calais, France. It was ordered closed in October 2016, and portions of it were burned by residents. However, local aid groups have noticed that migrants have started to return to the area. Instead of staying at the former camp, new arrivals have spread around town, sleeping at train stations or on the street. According to Le Figaro newspaper, police estimate up to 400 migrants are now in Calais. On average, more than 15 arrive each day. A volunteer at the refugee aid group Utopia 56 noted that about 60 to 80 of those migrants are minors. Aid groups are currently looking to build emergency shelters for the migrants, but they're facing resistance from the Ministers of Interior and Housing.
Foreign intelligence agents would love to get into this imposing building on the Moscow River. This is the National Defense Management Center, which controls all the activities of Russia's armed forces. And we've got exclusive footage coming up. But first, we need to get inside. This building's said to have the toughest security in the military. A simple ID won't be enough to get you through the door.
A biometric hand reader scans the veins on your palm, and the floor of the gateway is a weighing platform.
Anything off limits is certain to be picked up by the nearly 2,000 cameras. The perimeter bristles with sensors that look out for biological, chemical or radioactive contamination.
The system tracks all mobile communications in the complex.
Personnel must undergo a medical examination before every shift and a stringent physical every 3 months. Almost all the work's highly classified, but here's a lower security area that monitors the Army's day-to-day activities. This all's divided into sectors. These officers supervise military acquisitions. They deal with the medical records of the military personnel. Next are the military analysts and tackling training and military exercises. Officers can see with their own eyes exactly how work's ongoing in military factories thousands of kilometers away, and it's all in real time. Here's one such CCTV camera watching over the construction of a Mi-28 helicopter in southern Russia. These officers oversee air defense in Crimea. They monitor foreign reconnaissance planes snooping around the border on a regular basis, up to a dozen a day. So the Air Defense Division is always on high alert. Security comes right down to disposing of documents. They're turned into mush. And nowadays, most work's digital too. Hard copy isn't often used. The Army has its own closed-off internet. It connects every military unit for the fast and safe transfer of classified information. This building alone sends and receives 40,000 electronic messages a day. The National Centre doesn't just supervise the Army's current activities, it also predicts the development of future wars with the help of a supercomputer. It uses past conflicts to try to reach conclusions. The computer's said to be able to process the equivalent of 850 million books per second, and so far the military is using less than half of that capacity. But for the officers, here's a change of shift and another day ahead.
The administration delivered a sharp warning today to Iran at the White House briefing.
President Trump's national security advisor, Michael Flynn, used his first public appearance to declare a new hardline policy toward Iran.
Iran is now feeling emboldened. As of today, we are officially putting Iran on notice.
Flynn was referring to Iran's recent test of a ballistic missile. The test was considered a failure by U.S. intelligence because it exploded after flying 600 miles. But Flynn said it defied a UN resolution barring Iran from testing missiles capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Iran's foreign minister denied the charge and issued his own warning to the U.S. The U.S., he said, must not abuse this issue to spark a fresh tension. Flynn also cited Monday's attack against a Saudi Arabian frigate off the coast of Yemen by Iranian-backed rebels. Some U.S. intelligence analysts concluded the rebels thought they were attacking an American warship, even though there were no U.S. ships in the area at the time. A White House official said the administration was reviewing all options against Iran, from economic to military. It's too soon to say the Trump administration and Iran are now on a collision course, but that White House official said Iran should heed Flynn's warning and change its behavior.
Now here's a frightening report. Senior Israeli military officials are reporting that the Hamas terror group has successfully restored their military strength to what it once was before the 2014 war in Gaza. That war, known as Operation Protective Edge by Israel, destroyed most of Hamas's military arsenal and infrastructure. For the last 2.5 years, the de facto ruling power in the Gaza Strip has sought to rebuild its military capabilities by compiling thousands of missiles, small arms, and even rebuilding a network of tunnels into Israel. Now, a report from Israel's Channel 2 News claims much of Hamas's arsenal has been restored using makeshift materials found in the Gaza Strip itself. Even more concerning is a possibility that a restoration of ties between Hamas and Egypt could lead to the full opening of the Rafah border crossing from Gaza to the Sinai. If this were to take place, Hamas could import even more materials to build up its military capabilities. On Tuesday, the Islamist terror group showed off its military hardware at a memorial rally in the Gaza Strip, declaring Israel will suffer the consequences for the alleged assassination of a key Hamas weapons builder in Tunisia last December.
In another big story tonight, inmates are holding hostages inside a maximum security prison in Delaware, and Chip Reed is there. Chip?
Well, good evening. This hostage situation began at about 10:30 this morning when a prison guard made an emergency call for immediate assistance after 5 corrections employees were taken hostage by inmates. Police and SWAT teams responded quickly. This afternoon, 1 hostage was released with non-life-threatening injuries, but the other 4 are believed to still be in there, and we do not know their condition. Law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, are trying to negotiate a peaceful resolution, and we are told that there are, quote, good negotiations going on. A lawsuit was filed against this facility in 2015 over its treatment of mentally ill patients. That suit was settled in September. And Scott, according to the Justice Department, the Delaware prison system has the 5th highest rate of overcrowding in the nation.
If you think $1 million is hard enough to fathom, what about $1 trillion? The world's richest man, Bill Gates, could go from being a billionaire to the world's first trillionaire in just a matter of 25 years. That's as much as the GDP of Mexico. He's already worth $90 billion. In other words, if he were a country, he'd be the 63rd largest economy in the world. The famously philanthropic Microsoft co-founder has donated more than $30 billion to his charity, but Oxfam has found since 2009, the world's richest have benefited from an 11% annual rate of return, which puts him on track to be a trillionaire by the age of 86.
Attention all pork lovers. Breaking news. According to NBC News Online, the nation has bigger fish to fry as an apparent porkalypse is upon us. Stocks of bacon are at their lowest in years, since 1957 in fact. The plunge is said to be due to an increase in demand. It appears the nation's pork farmers are meeting the urgent need, according to the president of the Ohio Pork Council. Yes, there's a pork council, folks. For now, the 67% drop in inventory levels has led to a spike in pork belly prices, with January already seeing a hike of 20%.
You already know fast food isn't helping your waistline, but scientists say we need to worry about the packaging. Yep, you can apparently add the Big Mac box to the seemingly never-ending list of things trying to kill us. That's thanks to a study that showed up in the Environmental Science and Technology Letters Journal. The scientists behind it tested more than 400 samples of fast food packaging. They found fluorinated chemicals in 1/3 of the packages they tested. Look, you're already exposed to those chemicals all the time. They're in all sorts of stuff, like furniture, to clothing, to outdoor gear, and cosmetics. Apparently, some of these chemicals have been linked to a bunch of scary stuff like elevated cholesterol, kidney, and testicular cancer. And the researchers found the chemicals from the packaging can migrate to the food we eat. Now, there isn't a lot you can do about it. And you don't need another study to tell you that large fries are bad for you. But you can expect to see this study used as lobbying groups try to get restaurants to change their packaging.
It was a normal call for the men of Station 4 in Baytown. At a house 1 mile away, 65-year-old John McCormick collapsed while mowing his front yard. He had a history of heart trouble. This time his heart stopped. The firefighters and EMTs revived him and followed the ambulance to the hospital. But then engine driver Luke Bednarik had an idea. So they drove back to the house.
We're all fighting over who can push the mower first.
And that's when a neighbor secretly took this picture. Firefighter Blake Steffenauer finishing the front yard.
I just happened to get off the truck first and have the lawnmower first. We're all fighting over it.
They took turns. They did the backyard too, locked the garage and put the key in the mailbox and left this handwritten note that said, "We felt bad that your husband didn't get to finish the yard, so we did." And they didn't think it was that big of a deal.
No, not at all. Just something to help someone out in the worst time of their life.
But it was a letter and a gesture that made a daughter weep.
People still do random acts of kindness every day for people that they don't know.
This story does not have a happy ending. John McCormick died 2 days later, but his family thanked the firefighters for giving them those 2 days to say goodbye and for restoring their faith in people.
I just couldn't believe they took the time to do that.
With a simple, random act of kindness.